As you'll see here on the right-hand side, at my left, your right, three pictures of Ursula Shannon, John Furlong and Mary Steed, and we will remember them all here this afternoon. Mary Steed was a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of many people here today. The best way to possibly describe Mary Steed would have been force of nature. That was pretty much what Mary Steed was. If you knew her, if you even met her once, you'd never forget her. Force of nature was what Mary was, and she was a dear friend to many of us, myself included. Very many years ago, I became involved with a group called the Adopted Peoples Association. I did some help them a little bit to organise some meetings down here, and I first met our next guest back then, and went on to become part of the Adoption Rights Alliance, the Clown Project, Justice for Magdalene Research. And you don't see someone for a very long time and they come back with a PhD. I haven't seen her for many years. Another dear friend of mine from way back in the day, Dr. Claire McGettrick.
This one? Yeah. Thanks so much, PJ.
Yeah, that'll be. There you go.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? Since our first early troublemaking days. So good afternoon, everyone. As PJ said, my name is Claire McGettrick, born and Hughes, and it's a fantastic honour to be here finally, after many years of trying to be here at Bessborough Memorial. We finally made it, and thanks so much to Carmel and to Christy for the kind invitation to be here. Of course, it's kind of bittersweet that the first one I make is the first one since Mary died. But before I go on to say a few words about Mary, I just want to give you a brief update on some of the work we've been doing over the past few months and some of the issues that need to be resolved. It's not necessarily a political event, and forgive me, Taoiseach, I didn't know you were going to be here today. But, suffice it to say, I don't know if you met Mary Steed, but if I didn't address some of these issues, she'd figure out a way to hunt me down and put me in a box. So apologies in advance, I'd be nice. So over the past few months, the Clown Project and Justice for Magdalene's Research have made submissions to the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, to the group of UN Special Procedures mandate holders who wrote to the Irish Government in 2021, and to the UN Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. The Clown submissions critique the state apology and the government's action plan, both of which excludes thousands of affected people from the acknowledgement, redress and reparations they deserve. And the JFMR submission to CEDAW highlights the state's ongoing denial of Magdalene abuses and its failure to follow through on promised redress for survivors. I want to acknowledge that there's some progress has been made in recent years. Last October, legislation was passed to ensure that it's now illegal for records to be destroyed. And the National Centre for Research and Remembrance is well underway, and I want to acknowledge the Taoiseach's leadership role in that. It's such an important thing to have underway. And as Catherine will tell you in a moment, students will now have the opportunity at second level to learn about elements of this system in the national curriculum. And last week in particular saw a few significant developments that I just want to point to because they're so important. First of all, our calls for representation of affected people on the National Centre for Research and Remembrance Steering Committee, as well as a number of other committees, have finally been heard. I want to see what the way the appointment process will work, but for now, I think this is a hugely positive step in the right direction, and we really would love to see more of this because we remain unrepresented on several of the boards and committees that impact our lives. And we will continue to insist that this is remedied because it's absolutely crucial that we're given a say in the decisions that directly affect us. And representation isn't merely a matter of principle. Survivors and affected people, we come from all walks of life. We have valuable skills and expertise to bring to the table. And indeed, many of us have institutional memories unmatched by most politicians and civil servants, with the possible exception, I think, of the Taoiseach, who's been around, I think, longer than ourselves. Second, the government also announced last week that affected people who wish to do so can deposit their testimonies, papers and artefacts with the National Archives and the National Museum. This is a hugely, hugely important development, and because for too long the abuses perpetrated against people like us have been absent from mainstream histories, and having our testimonies as part of the national record is a crucial step in rectifying this. And I really, really hope we don't have a fight in our hands to ensure that this is an inclusive process. Additionally, last week also saw the publication of the Special Advocates Report, our first annual report. And it's no secret I had significant concerns about how the role was set up, but I really have to commend Patricia Carey and her staff for the work they've done over the past year. The prominence of affected people's testimonies in the report and the breadth of issues covered, they both speak in volumes, and I'd really encourage people to keep engaging with the Special Advocate's Office so that these issues can be brought and continue to be raised at government level. So it's true that we've made some progress, yet it's also true that from the perspective of those of us who are personally affected, the state's efforts to address these issues can often feel like a further injustice. By way of a number of small examples, the state denies and ignores the full extent of abuses and has repeatedly ignored calls for independent, thorough investigations into institutional and forced family separation abuses in the Magdalen laundries, in the mother and baby, county homes and other institutions, and in the adoption and boarding out systems. Survivors and affected people, including those living abroad, are denied the enhanced healthcare they deserve, while thousands are excluded from accessing redress. Access to records is neither unconditional nor comprehensive, and vast swathes of these documents remain out of reach, most often in the hands of religious orders or private actors. Although it's now 32 years since the events that brought JFMR into existence, most of the 155 women who were exhumed from High Park Magdalen Laundry and subsequently cremated to make way for property development remain unaccounted for. And last but by no means least, while progress has been made at Tuam, most of the relatives of the 9,000 children who died in mother and baby and other institutions, including here in Bessborough, are left without acknowledgement, without answers, and without a grave to visit. Simply put, it doesn't have to be this difficult. Full acknowledgement and reparation for all past abuses, a cessation of ongoing injustices, and a meaningful commitment to non-recurrence is no less than survivors and affected people deserve, and our nation would be all the better for it. Before I move on to talk about Mary, I want to acknowledge the sad loss of Ursula Shannon in December last year. Ursula was a formidable campaigner, as we've already heard, and as I'm sure Terry will tell us, for the rights for fellow adopted people. And I only met her in person a few times, but by God, she had a wicked sense of humour, and we saw that online in the groups as well. I know she's deeply missed in the adoption world. And I didn't know John, I'm afraid, but on behalf of all of us in ARA and JFMR and Clan, I want to wish our sincere condolences to Terry and to Ursula's family, and indeed to John's family. So, about Mary. As you all know, in October, we lost our beloved Mary Steed. I'll never forget the first time I was in the same room as Mary. I think it was possibly the same time I was in the same room as PJ Coogan. It was 2002, and I was in a Dublin hotel room attending an Adoption Ireland Adopted People's Association meeting, and Mary was one of the speakers. She'd just travelled across the Atlantic to meet her mother Josie for the first time, and although I had been attending public adoption gatherings for many years and consider myself an activist since the 90s, at that juncture I wasn't actually a member of any organisation. So when Mary spoke, I just remember being in complete awe of her. I was just blown away to be in the presence of one of the so-called banished babies who had come back to reclaim her Irish history and heritage and fight the good fight. But more than that, for me, Mary was a role model for how to be an adopted person, empowered and proud and unrepentant. And in that moment, she became my hero, and she remains so to this day. Soon after that meeting, I joined the Adoption Ireland Board of Directors, and Mary was just always so welcoming and generous with her time and her encouragement as I learned the ropes. In 2003, along with Angela Newsom, my now wife, Mary and I co-founded Justice for Magdalens, and in 2009, Mary joined Susan Lohan and me in co-founding Adoption Rights Alliance. Since the early 2000s, Mary travelled to Ireland countless times to campaign, to attend meetings, participate in events, indeed such as the breadth of her contribution that Catherine and I are going to have to cover between us. Catherine will talk about her Magdalene activism, while I'll cover the adoption side of the house. In 2003, Mary spoke powerfully during the adoption legislation consultation organised by the late Brian Lenihan. In 2014, in the aftermath of Tuam, Mary worked night and day to educate the media and the public on the wider issues, including the deaths of thousands of infants in other institutions, including here in Bessborough. Mary was also one of the witnesses who contributed to the Clan submission to the Mother and Baby Homes Commission. She gave powerful evidence about her own experiences of forced family separation, child trafficking and vaccine trials, and about the human rights violations committed against her mother Josie. When the Commission reached conclusions that were diametrically opposed to the witness testimony of many witnesses, Mary, along with 7 other witnesses, including Philomena Lee and Mary Harney, who's here today, took judicial review proceedings to challenge these findings. And in December 2021, the High Court declared that the Commission had denied fair procedures to Mary and her fellow litigants, a finding that the state did not dispute. In recent years, alongside the former journalist Conal O'Farta, Mary carried out extensive research to uncover adoption trafficking practices from Ireland to the US and other jurisdictions. Conal has committed to continuing this research with our support, and I firmly believe it will become one of Mary's most impactful legacies. Mary was always a powerful witness to the experience of being trafficked from Ireland to America for adoption, and she often spoke of the loss of her history, heritage, language and culture. She spent her whole life reclaiming that heritage, and she did so magnificently. They may have taken Mary out of Ireland, but they couldn't take Ireland out of Mary. Indeed, yeah. It's true. Indeed, Mary Steed was a proud Irish woman. Yet, the state has not done a single thing to make reparations for the fact that Mary and her fellow citizens were exported from her country of origin. But that didn't stop Mary from putting in countless hours of her spare time over several decades to seek justice for the thousands of people affected by Ireland's institutional and forced family separation system. Simply put, Mary did far more for Ireland than Ireland ever did for her, and our country is in her debt. As Mary lived in the States, as does Jim, it's rare for all of us to be in the same country, never mind the same room, and therefore our office, sorry, I'm holding on to the mic stand here, I think I'm losing it. But that didn't stop Mary from putting in, thanks so much. That didn't stop Mary from putting in countless hours of her spare time over several decades. Oh, I'm sorry, I went into a previous paragraph. I was trying to fix my microphone stand. Mary lived in the States, so our office has been very much a very virtual office. But Mary used to say it's just like being next door, and it really did feel that way. Indeed, the Irish adoption sphere is so geographically widespread. Most of what we do online is online, including the ARA peer support group, which has around 3,000 members. In recent years, Mary has done most of the heavy lifting in that group, and she continued to do so right up until her death. In fact, the administrative records show that she was still moderating the group up until 4 days before she died. Over the years, Mary guided countless individuals through the process of obtaining their records and of searching for family members, providing support to them every step of the way. For burgeoning activists, Mary encouraged them gently to take a beat and learn from those with experience before moving forward on a new adventure. In welcoming newer folk, Mary always had a kind word, reassuring them that there are no stupid questions and the kettle's always on here. It's also fair to say that moderating large online spaces can be taxing at times, or as Mary would say, it's cat herding day today. There are a few of us who are admins on the groups, but Mary had a special set of skills that only the rest of us could aspire to. Only Mary knew how to restore order and put manners on thankfully rare troublemakers. Crucially though, Mary always did it in a way that didn't make anyone involved feel worse, even if they had been told to politely go and sit themselves in the corner. It's unsurprising, therefore, that Mary was loved and respected across the entire sphere in which we work, and that love and respect is beautifully exemplified here today by the work that Carmel and Christy have put in to ensure that she's remembered, and indeed Ursula and John. Thank you both so much for just ensuring that Mary's legacy will never be forgotten here in the place where she spent the first 18 months of her life with her beloved mother Josie. To those of us who worked closely with her, Mary was much more than a friend and a colleague. She was family. And over the past couple of decades, we've supported each other through thick and thin and shared the ups and downs of each other's lives. When the ships were down, you could be guaranteed Mary Steed would be in your corner. And she was one of the most empathetic and understanding people I have ever known. But she didn't suffer fools, and God help you if you were a bully. She abhorred injustice of any kind, and I can attest from personal experience that Mary was never long about nailing her colours to the mast when somebody she cared about was being mistreated. Mary is quite simply irreplaceable. She was my friend, my hero, and my comrade, and my honorary big sister. We still can't quite believe she's gone, and we're simply lost without her. Rest assured, we will continue our collective work in her name. But that said, I think you'll all agree that wherever she is, she's raising hell for sure. Finally, nobody will miss Mary more than her family, especially her children, Kerry, Jessica, and Alex, who can't be here but are very much with us here in spirit today. And we ask that you keep them in your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, when my early days of working with Mary, she said, as a journalist, I give a piece of advice. If you make a mistake, that's okay. If you make a mistake without having checked something with me first, we're having a conversation. And I could check with her at 4 a.m. She didn't care once I checked.